Well, welcome back into Talking Fitchburg. Joining me today is Michael. He's from the Department of Ag, Trade, Consumer Protection, and he is here to collect your data. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, no, he's not. Technically, no, he's not. He's here to tell you what data is collected and used for, though. And this is interesting because up until a few years ago, nobody really knew. Maybe that's an overstatement, but something changed, and people were now notified about cookies being collected when you walk into a web page now, and you're like, well, where's my chocolate chip cookies?
You're not going to get them.
No, you're not. But what you are getting is a notice and letting you know that data is being collected. As we look at this as a whole and data being collected online, it's definitely changed. There's definitely awareness, but you still need to know what's going on behind the scenes. So dang it, where do we start here today?
Well, I think a good place to start is understanding what cookies do and why we get those disclaimers, because the cookies kind of start and is the best point to gather as much data as they can about what's going on. And that's why you see those disclaimers now, so you understand what's being collected and how it's being used. And that information is being collected by just about everyone when you are online. Retailers will use it to kind of tailor your shopping habits so they can promote certain things that based on your buying history or even browsing history that you might be interested in. Also general browsing. Web serves will look at, all right, what have you been searching recently? And they'll start pushing some of those little notifications and things that you might be interested in, such as weather or stories about, you start looking at the same kind of story, all of a sudden your whole feed is filled with that same type of content. But then they also are gathering that data because data is worth money. And so those histories, that profile about who you are and what you're looking for is then sold to other companies or other businesses that can use that data to also promote their products or their services. So the cookies may seem, or what you are innocently looking through and looking at, maybe what you seem to be a benign activity, but at the same time, there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Well, and I think that poses the question, if somebody was like, well, I don't want them to know the data. I don't want them to know. It's interesting because I've had some websites where I've said no, and it feels like it's just shut down. It's like, oh, well, you're not going to move forward then if you're not going to give us our data. Like kind of a turning point. So, if people are concerned about what is being collected, what can they do at those points?
Well, I think you bring a good point of reading the terms and conditions, and this isn't necessarily, I recognize what I'm saying is not going to be practical because they're so long, but...
Yeah, they are insanely long. Like, they are almost a deterrent to not read it.
And there's, certain agencies are looking at that and saying, can we make this a little bit more transparent? But what happens there, and you mentioned, is all of a sudden you want to use that product or maybe use that website or look at something, and they say, well, if you don't agree to our terms and conditions, you can't do it. And that's their prerogative. But when that happens, that shows you that, well, that's what was written inside there, and that's what they want to use it for, and that's what happens. And so it's starting there. It's also making sure you're paying attention to the device that you're on, what options you have with that to turn off that tracking. That particular website might say, hey, do you want to share your information? Or paying attention when you're buying your shopping and you're buying something. Oftentimes there'll be a box that says, hey, do you want to learn more about it? Do you want to receive things of us? Do you want us to share your information? Typically they're pre-checked, so you pay attention to make sure you're unchecking those. And then also recognizing when you do make those purchases or look, are you also agreeing to have your information shared or have more information received from that company? So it's really just attention to detail.
So I like this question on here. Why go to all the trouble of doing these things? And when I say doing, like, paying attention to these alerts coming up, understanding how your data is used and those decision points, there are bad actors out there that might not even care, not even on the cookies front, but also they might be keeping track of some of those things as well.
Yeah, a lot of the things we're talking about are when legitimate businesses are trying to do it for real purposes, real commerce. But there's also those bad actors because, as I mentioned, data's worth money. And so just getting that data itself, maybe they don't want to exploit it. They just want to go ahead and sell it elsewhere. But also, certainly there's a lot of them, as we both know, that they're going to exploit it and they want to grab it. And that's how you see all of a sudden with data breaches and little things that you're buying. And you're not, for instance, you're checking out and you want to buy a sandwich. And they say, hey, we just want to enter your email address to hear more things. Well, now your email address is attached to that payment method. And so little things right there start to build on. And before you know it, there's a little data breach and now information just from eating is out there.
One of my favorites, and it's going back to what you said before, is you show back up or you get back on a social media platform or something, and then you were searching fishing gear, the real fishing gear, not the fake fishing gear. Probably a bad example in this case, but nevertheless, you're just seeing those things pop up or whatever. Pick your poison there. Should you be concerned when you see those things start to happen around you? Like all of a sudden you're like, man, did I? Because I'm always like, I don't know, like, do I care? I don't know. Does it mean I'm in trouble? I don't know.
Well, I think it's almost unavoidable, but it really depends on how much browsing, how much you're looking at, how often you're on. Of course, that's going to increase the opportunity for exposure. If you really keep a very, very clean profile and you're kind of disciplined about what you're doing, and all of a sudden you get this barrage, that's a cause for concern because something else was happening there. But if it's just incremental and all of a sudden you see those algorithms adjusting with what you're doing, I'd say that's commonplace.
All right. Well, if you want to learn more about this, have any questions? It's a lot of information, and I know it's a tough area to kind of learn about. But certainly there are some resources on DATCP's website that will help you kind of navigate this space and stay updated with it, because this is a fast changing, I would say, area from the way I recognize it.
It is, and we have a large library of fact sheets and guidance documents that'll help you look at, hey, how can I stay protected in advance? How can I proactively put some of these safeguards in place? And you can find all of those at datcp.wi.gov. Or if you want to ask a couple questions about those, give us a call at 1-800-422-7128.
Yeah, you don't have to be afraid to see the cookie thing pop up and know that that's a protection piece for you. But, take your time. Navigate the space, and certainly I would check the DATCP's website to answer some more questions. Michael, appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeremy.